Hi, everybody. My name is Lauren, and I'm a research intern at the Center for Community-Based Research.
Hi everyone, I'm Sherry Rezvani and I'm a researcher at the Center for Community-Based Research.
And we are both here and pleased today to focus on evaluating refugee programs. So this is part 1 of 5 webinars. We're going to be focusing on evaluating refugee programs and building evaluation capacity. Just to give you a bit of context, this webinar is part of a 3-year project funded by Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. It's designed to build evaluation capacity in the refugee settlement sector. So we've done workshops across the country in a partnership between the Centre for Community-Based Research in Waterloo, Ontario, that's us, and the Evaluation Capacity Network at the University of Alberta in Edmonton. These online webinars are meant to be used as a resource for those who either were unable to attend the workshops on community-based evaluation, perhaps you attended the workshop and you want a refresher on the content, or perhaps you just have a keen interest in building your evaluation capacity. So these are our learning objectives for today's webinar, and actually for the full 5 webinars. So over the 5 webinars, we're going to be focusing on what community-based evaluation is, why community-based evaluation is important for refugee programs specifically, and then also how individuals and the organizations that you represent can be conducting your own community-based evaluations. So this first webinar will focus on the what and the why, and the 4 subsequent webinars will focus on the how.
Thanks, Lauren. I would like to step in here and say that this webinar is a part of a larger project that has a number of evaluation capacity building strategies. So we encourage you to check our project website at www.evalforrefugee.ca, as there are a number of additional resources such as primer videos and outcomes inventory based on reports and literature in the refugee sector, additional evaluation resources and online sites, and PowerPoint slides from this workshop. This project is guided by a national advisory committee of practitioners, academics, networks, and people with lived refugee experience. In addition, we are having good resources on our website. We have developed a mentorship program. If you check our website, you can see a list of mentors that are interested and willing to mentor, coach, and work alongside refugee programs in evaluation. And if you want to become a mentor, moreover, check our website and sign up to learn more about how you can become a mentor and help build evaluation capacity of groups across Canada. If you also need more information and if you need a reminder of the basics of community-based evaluation, we have video toolkit in our website that gives an overview of community-based evaluation and how you can use it for refugee programs. Moreover, we are in the process of developing a Canada-wide community of practice. We have connected with OCASI to create an evaluating refugee programs community of practice within settlenet.org. So we will keep you posted when this community of practice is coming up.
Great, thanks, Sherry. So this slide is just our agenda for the 5 webinars. It's very similar to the learning objectives slide I'd already reviewed. So again, today we'll be focusing on the first 2, the what and the why, that are on the left. Throughout the presentation, there will be discussion points that you're encouraged to participate in. So we understand that you guys have lots of experience working with refugees, so we invite you to apply some of the content that we're introducing to your own refugee programs. And at any point, if we're moving at all quickly and you'd like some more time to reflect, by all means, feel free to just hit pause on the webinar and then restart whenever you're feeling ready. So this statement here, evaluation always makes programs better. I wonder if you could take a moment to think about this statement. And if this statement, if there was a Likert scale ranging from strongly agree on the left to strongly disagree on the right, where do you think you would stand with this statement? And have you always had the same opinion to this statement over time? And maybe if you've changed your opinion, can you remember what caused you to move? Or what might cause you to move in the future? So we're going to be talking about evaluation a lot over the next 5 webinars. So let's start with what actually is evaluation? And what does it mean to you? What comes to mind when you hear the word evaluation? Mostly, the word evaluation, which comes from evaluate, itself can sometimes limit our understanding of what it is, what it can be, or perhaps even what it should be. In reality, it can be so much bigger than perhaps what jumps to mind. It can be an opportunity for strategic thinking. It can be an opportunity for learning and for integrating our reflexive practice. So this is just one definition of what evaluation is. It's an organized or systematic approach to collecting information. So that's information about activities, impacts, and effectiveness that helps to improve a program or organization and describe its accomplishments. The purpose of an evaluation should be to improve a program and describe its accomplishments. So you might be asking yourself, why evaluate in the refugee sector? Or why are you evaluating in the refugee sector? While evaluation can be used for a variety of programs, practices, and policies, for the purpose of this webinar, we want you to focus on your reality. So the goal and purpose of evaluating in the refugee sector, serving sector, is to better understand how various stakeholders are involved and impacted by refugee programs and how these interventions or programs can be improved and create greater change. So you can see here on this slide, there's a list of folks who kind of fall into who we would refer to as stakeholders. And you might notice that it's quite diverse. So it can involve yourself as a service provider, or perhaps you are working within management. It can involve sponsors, researchers, the government, the broader community, and of course, people with lived experience of being a refugee themselves. So there are several ways to approach evaluation with individuals and organizations. One way is to consider the continuum that's on this slide. So on the left, you have the expert-based approach. Oftentimes that means there's one individual or one group, and they are seen as external, and they come in and they're kind of imposed into the process, and they come in to assess. While on the other side, you have more of a community-based approach. So that involves many stakeholders, such as the stakeholders I'd reviewed in the previous slide, working in partnership, drawing on different expertise throughout the evaluation, and then using the expertise of all the stakeholders and individuals involved. In evaluation for refugee programs, we are proposing a community-based model to ensure that evaluation is done effectively. So the role of the evaluator will shift depending on the approach or model the evaluator takes. So if you remember the last slide, we had expert-based and community-based. So when we look at this slide here, the goal-based model, which is in the blue font, is more of an expert-based approach, while the other three, which are in a green font, are more community-based. So this slide just illustrates the different dynamics an evaluation approach may have depending on the model that you choose. So for example, if we start at the goal-based model, which is a bit more expert-based, the evaluator is at the top and directs the entire process. And then if we were to jump to the lower right for the developmental model, the evaluator walks alongside the group as a model or program is being built. So it's no longer that top-down approach. And then for the final two, the participatory and empowerment models, the evaluation supports the process. Stakeholders work collaboratively, and many skills and expertise are acknowledged. Though the process itself is facilitated by an expert, there's participation from everyone in the room. And in the empowerment model, specifically, everyone in the community is involved and empowered to evaluate. So I invite you to think for a moment. Perhaps maybe you've actually seen these models in practice before. Maybe you can already think of what works well for some of the models and then perhaps what doesn't work well. So I will switch it over to Sherry now to talk a bit more about community-based evaluation.
Thanks, Lauren. So we are going to talk more about the community-based evaluation. Community-based evaluation tends to be within the empowerment, participatory, and development roles. Community-based evaluation actively involves stakeholders in all phases of evaluation. Stakeholders are people who have a stake or interest in the evaluation and may include service providers, organizations, governments, service receivers, or clients. In other words, stakeholders drive the evaluation. So what is the goal of community-based evaluation? The goal is to improve and make positive changes to the program. However, evaluation is a spectrum. Evaluation can be more or less community-based. It depends on the degree of participation from stakeholders. So how can we use this model to provide results that are useful to those who need them the most? There are three hallmarks of community-based evaluation: stakeholder-driven, participatory, action-oriented. Community-based evaluation is practically relevant to stakeholders, people with lived refugee experience, settlement workers, sponsors, researchers, government. It is an evaluation that gives equitable control of the evaluation agenda through active engagement, mutual benefit in design and implementation. And it is action-oriented, with the purpose of change or social justice. It uses findings to make changes to practice, programs, and policies. Moreover, there are three goals or functions of community-based evaluation: learning-oriented, sharing the results, and engaging people. The community-based evaluation helps all stakeholders realize successes, find out what is not working, what needs modification. We do this by gaining new insights through systematic and rigorous evaluation research. For example, the community-based evaluation can help us understand the current programs being used for refugee newcomers. Moreover, community-based evaluation shares the results. This involves communicating what has been learned in ways that enable people to use the evaluation results. Community-based evaluation recognizes the role of the broader community and how it is impacted by these programs. And the third goal is engaging people. Community-based evaluation involves all stakeholders. including refugee newcomers, settlement workers, sponsors, researchers, and the government, to build strong relationships so that they can better be equipped to do and use the evaluation together.
So now that we've introduced evaluation and specifically what community-based evaluation is, and then have kind of hinted at how it might apply to evaluating refugee programs, I invite you at this moment to ask yourselves, why would we want to evaluate refugee programs? So feel free to pause this video and take as long as you need. So there are many ways to answer this question, and we certainly don't have all of those ways. I'll outline what we as a partnership have seen so far, which might very well overlap with what you have identified. So what we found is that there are few refugee program evaluations that are actually published and shared widely. When evaluations are conducted in the refugee sector, many of these are not published or shared beyond the organizations doing them. So that makes them not very accessible. Moreover, the evaluations that have taken place are usually expert-driven and sporadic. We've also found that there are insufficient tools that exist for measuring outcomes. And then you may have already found this in your work. Sometimes there's this lack of distinction between refugee and immigrant outcomes. So often they're lumped together when actually they can be quite different.
Thanks, Lauren. I also want to point to the fact that there are shifting world contexts. Impacts on policies from different governments all have effects on the refugee sector. And we are in the midst of a refugee crisis, with the global refugee population currently at 25.9 million.
So that was just the slide that Sherry was speaking to. Apologies if it was buffering on your end. So if you'd like, by all means, you can pause and have a read through that as well. Otherwise, we'll move on.
All right, so closer to home, Canada has been a leader in accepting refugees. For example, Canada committed to resettling 25,000 refugees in 2015 and has accepted over 52,000 Syrian refugees, with targets set to increase. So we can see how much impact policy changes in Canada can have on the refugee sector. So what does this context have to do with evaluation? As mentioned earlier, there are few accessible, rigorous, and useful evaluations available in the refugee sector. The demand is growing for gathering good evidence that can be used to inform practice, programs, and policies, especially innovative ones. There are also growing expectations with a higher degree of accountability on the part of the government and groups that work with refugee newcomers. With this in mind, building evaluation capacity in the refugee sector can help meet these goals. You might be thinking to yourself, evaluation sounds great, but where do we even begin? Research shows that the not-for-profit sector in Canada generally, and the refugee sector more specifically, are lacking evaluation capacity. So what happens if you lack the capacity to conduct evaluations? In order to unpack this, we must first delve into what evaluation capacity means. So what is evaluation capacity? At the individual level, it is the skills, knowledge, and attitudes to the evaluation and use of it. Individuals are embedded in organizations that also require resources and have cultures that support strategic learning. All of this is in environments that can be enabling or hindering evaluation capacity. That might include funding requirements, expectations to do the evaluation, lack of resources, and other factors. Evaluation capacity is made up of individual and organizational capacity. At the individual level, it is important to focus on attitudes toward evaluation, individual evaluation skills and knowledge, and how that translates into the motivation to both conduct evaluation and use the information to make changes to the practice, programs, and policy. However, individuals are situated within organizations. It is the skills and attitudes combined with an enabling organizational culture that leads to a motivation to create an evaluation culture. This concludes webinar number 1. However, before we finish, I want you to take some time to reflect on what are some of the barriers to evaluation in your organization. What are individual barriers that hold you back from evaluation? Moreover, if you're curious to know what is your individual evaluation capacity, or what is your organization's capacity to do evaluation, I invite you to check our website at www.evalforrefugee.ca and check our evaluation readiness tool to assess your evaluation capacity. In this webinar, we have discussed about what community-based evaluation is and why this type of evaluation is so appropriate and important for refugee programs. If you have questions or comments, please send them to us at general@communitybasedresearch.ca or ecn info@ualberta.ca. Thank you for listening. We will see you in the next webinar.